Welcome to WTUFO. I hope you're enjoying watching or listening. If you'd like to support the show directly, you can do that at patreon.com/WTUFO, patreon.com/WTUFO. That will help increase the chances that the show continues to exist. If you're listening on a podcast player, you can also rate and review us. That'll help the algorithm know to tell other people about us. And likewise, if you're on YouTube, you can like and subscribe. And finally, if you're really digging it, you can post us on your favorite social or put us in a thread to your friends. Just kind of helping us spread the word, since we're a new show, is extremely useful and a valuable contribution to our mission. So thank you so much for engaging. I hope you enjoy the episode. What the UFO? I'm here with Thomas Jane. Thomas, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's good to be here.
Thank you so much. Thomas is an actor, writer, director, producer. You've probably seen him in myriad projects. Tom, would you like to talk by just explaining a little bit about your background, where you come
Not
from,
really.
professionally or personally?
No,
All right,
that sounds boring.
We can
Boring
skip
as
right
hell,
to
doesn't
UFO
it?
background.
Who cares who people are anymore?
You can
Just
Wikipedia, Tom.
get into it. I'm already skipping this video. It's been 10 seconds.
All right, let's go right to the phenomena then. Where did you start your journey with the phenomena? And I heard you had a sighting that you don't like to talk about, so we don't have to do details on that. But
I had an experience. God, I don't know, 2011, 2012, something like that. And it changed my understanding of what reality is. In other words, it taught me that I have no freaking idea what reality is. And that's really the wake-up call that we're trying to wrap our minds around here.
Mm.
There's people who watch Bigfoot videos, people who watch ghost videos, people who watch UFO videos. Now, these things are very different, but they all kind of serve this engagement with the unknown, the idea that there might be something larger to our reality than we were taught in school, right? Everybody's got that kind of sneaking suspicion that the experts, maybe they don't know as much as they say they know, okay? And then you do a little bit of historical research, and you discover that the experts from the last generation didn't know what the hell they were talking about, because the new experts have corrected them. And then you go back, and that goes back and back and back, and it never ends, right? 100 years ago, they were thinking, well, we got this all wrapped up. All we need to do is dot some T's and cross some I's, and we'll be good to go. And then quantum mechanics, and black body radiation, and blew people's minds, and they were like, wait a second, and today we still don't know what the hell gravity is. What is it? 67? No, it's 95% of the universe is dark. We don't know what it is. We call it dark. Dark means I don't know what the hell that is, but we're working on it. Okay. So no, we don't have it all buttoned up. And in fact, this society is not heading in a good direction, or at least a sustainable direction. So we've got a couple of problems. If you've got kids, I've got kids. We're worried about how they're going to fare out there. Are they going to be able to enjoy the same kind of things that I've enjoyed? Probably not, in some ways, which is really disconcerting. My kids' generation is the first generation that won't do as well as their parents. That means we're doing something wrong, really wrong. The fact that we're in the middle of a sixth major extinction, the fact that this climate change thing seems to be an unavoidable reaction to something that we're maybe doing wrong. Maybe we should look at that. Do we have any part in this? I don't know. I don't think the scientists who say they know really know either. Climate science is incredibly difficult. But, if you have a choice between throwing 18 billion tons of trash into the ocean or not, maybe we should choose not to do that if we could. Right now, that doesn't seem to be on the table. So you look around and you're like, okay, we could definitely make some improvements around here. Where do we start? And I think one of the great places to start is to recognize that we're not alone, that other societies have probably faced similar challenges on other planets and overcame them. Now, what were their solutions? And would that be something that we'd be interested in? Are they all like part of a Borgian hive mind, and therefore, they're not drinking Pepsi Cola and throwing it into the ocean? I don't know. But just the fact that they exist is a game changer. And it's something that we're finally starting to take seriously, So it's a little bit further down the road than the old spiritualists or the Bigfoot hunters. We actually have some really solid evidence that doesn't suggest, it proves that there's a non-human intelligence on this planet. We're just in the process of wrapping our minds around that. And it's a personal journey. This is not something that you can watch a documentary and be told. It's something that you have to come to on your own. And I'm interested in that personal journey that people have to make to be able to step into the real world and recognize what kind of universe we really live in.
That's a really interesting angle to highlight. And it's something I'm very interested in too, specifically with this show. I want to help people process their first steps into this world.
Okay.
A thing that I'm finding weird is that it's really hard, if not impossible, to get somebody to take the first step. But then once they're on that journey, we can all kind of help each other out by sharing resources and comparing notes as we take this road together. But I've had, I think, borderline zero success getting anybody to go from 0 to 1.
No,
does that track your experience?
Yeah, it's a personal journey. It's something that has to, I'm not saying that you have to see your own UFO.
Mm-hmm.
There's pygmies running around in the Amazon, and I've never seen one. But if you held a gun to my head, I'd have to say, yeah, pygmies exist. With my fingers crossed, because hopefully I hadn't been duped by the world. But as far as I know, pygmies are a thing, and I guess they don't threaten us the way that aliens threaten us.
Mm-hmm.
So people aren't open to the idea because it's a threat. It's threatening.
And likewise, they don't offer us potential hyper technology, so we're not militarily obsessed.
Oh yeah, we're militarily obsessed, but as far as Joe Blow, who's sort of got a vague interest in the phenomenon and might be clicking on your video to sort of see if there's any there, and it's something that he should start devoting maybe 10 minutes on a weekend to, because you don't really have time for much else. Then what do we say to them? Besides keep pushing forward. But again, it sort of boils down to, well, what does it matter? Okay, what does it matter? The military, yeah, sure. It matters because if they can reverse engineer some stuff, then they could take over the world and their world domination plans get more realistic. But for us, what does it matter? And I have to say it matters a great deal, because it will once we start absorbing this, it'll transform the world. And not because of 0 point energy, not because we might, one day have an anti-gravity car, which probably won't happen because I'm just guessing, but I would imagine that whatever that sort of engine is that you stick into your anti-gravity car could probably be used for other nefarious purposes. So, I guess that's why we all don't have little mini nuclear reactors in our garage. We could. Somebody could build those things, be about the size of a coffee table,
mm-hmm.
and you could throw it in your house, and that would be that. But that goes against, they say safety, but what it really goes against is the hierarchy of energy control that we are living in. It goes against the bill that shows up once a month.
Mm.
That's what that threatens. And aliens also threaten the bill that shows up every month, but in a different way, in a way that's really startling. And so aside from the energy aspect or the technology aspect, aliens also impact our view of consciousness and who we think we are, and what I call it a divided society that we live in. A divided society has to communicate using symbols. In a divided society, you can't prove that anyone else is conscious except for yourself, right? You can't prove it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an assumption that seems to work, unless you're a complete narcissist and you're living in a solipsist world where you're the center of everything. And for those people, there's probably not very much help, and aliens don't really matter. But for the rest of us, the potential to expand our consciousness, and I'm talking about for real, I'm not talking about, astral projection. I'm talking about telepathy. I'm talking about a telepathic mind meld that we can achieve, that is possible on our planet. Like, we humans, if we took it seriously, we could do that. Not only is it natural, as the wonderful podcast, the Telepathy tapes, demonstrates, where they have autistic, non-speaking teenagers who are fully 100% telepathic, children, teenagers, young adults, and adults, I think. But these non-speakers have proven, and I've been following Diane Powell's work for about a decade, so I was aware of her original experiments, which happened back in 2014, 13. And she was getting some really interesting results, but not 100%.
Do you know?
That's actually part of my book, A Human's Guide to Visiting Aliens. I researched it for that book and became fascinated with that, because I wanted to know, is telepathy that aliens exhibit technological, or is it natural? Is it a feature of the universe that we live in and biology, or is it a technology? Because obviously we can do that too. Neuralink will allow brains to hook up eventually, but it turns out we don't need Neuralink. We need a different kind of technology that taps into and enhances a natural ability to create mind-to-mind communication. And that does change the world. It changes everything about the world that we live in.
First of all, great point about increasing the subjective awareness of mutual consciousness. I've never thought about that idea, that we could get closer to confirming that other people are conscious by telepathically engaging with each other.
There you go.
Interesting idea. Second, great question about whether they're doing this with nanobots or it's all caudate Hudimans or whatever.
Right.
And then third, to the telepathy tapes, I was just talking with my girlfriend about some debunking research around this today, and I'm curious about your experience with Powell's earlier work. Do you know if she's done some experiments where the person facilitating the communication does not know the number that the kid is trying to guess or the word that they're trying to psychically target? Because it was the sort of center of this debunking idea that if the person who's holding the iPad knows what the 4-digit number is, they're going to consciously or not kind of steer things toward that result.
Yeah.
I would like to see the experiment done, taking that person out of the communication chain. I was wondering if Powell had done any of that.
The experiments will be done. She is setting up more rigorous experiments.
Cool.
She's been able to, all this stuff takes money, and nobody's giving her any money to study telepathy in autistic children, right? To do a really rigorous scientific experiment, it takes a lot of people, a lot of equipment, and a lot of money, period. So because of the success of the telepathy tapes, those experiments will now be able to be done. And to answer your question, human-initiated, innate, telepathic, mind-to-mind communication is 100% real. That is a thing. Now, it's the job of the skeptic to try to debunk that, which is exactly what they should be doing. They should be looking at every conceivable way to poke holes in that hypothesis. But at the end of the day, they will be proven wrong if it's done with any with any clarity, and above board. This will happen. I think it'll take a couple of years, and then it'll take probably a couple of years for it to start to trickle down. You have to understand, this is a threat. And again, these ideas, the reason why people have been conditioned to reject alien visitation is because everything about them threatens the power structures that we exist within. And we are consciously and unconsciously supporting the power structures that we exist within because we've been conditioned to do that. So breaking that conditioning is maybe one of the biggest dangers that alien visitation poses. They're not, okay, in 1960, the Brookings Institute was commissioned by NASA to release a report on, what would be the psychological and social impact of contact with ET, right? They weren't talking about flying saucers. They were talking about contact with ET. And one of the things that the Brookings came back with was that society would be threatened. The upheaval of society may become so great that things would start to fall apart. But they weren't talking about you and me. They were talking about the power structures that control you and me. That is what is threatened, and they're dead right. Aliens threaten the power structures of the planet, and in a deep existential way.
I've heard you cite the Wendt and Duvall paper along these lines as well.
Yeah, you heard me talk about Wendt and Duvall?
Yeah, another really rigorous, great examination of how these power structures might be threatened and why they might be incentivized.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great paper. If anyone's interested, check out it's a paper from 2007 by Wendt and Duvall. It's called The UFO Taboo. And it's a wonderful sort of if people are worried, well, why doesn't science take it seriously? Why can't governments just, tell us what they know? This is the answer. Wendt and Duvall is a very, very rigorous analysis of what the problem really is.
And to TLDR it for folks, they sort of say it would undermine the sovereignty of nation states. That the idea that announcing that something else was more powerful than governments is sort of like anathema to government control. And so it disincentivizes revealing that information.
Aliens exist outside the power structures, outside of science, outside of government. You can't arrest them. You can't tax them. They're smart. They're smarter than us, so we can't study them.
And if they're showing up in people's bedrooms, that's going to freak people out.
And there's that.
What do you think? Do you buy this idea that things would fall apart? Because the counterpoint is, I don't know. We've onboarded a lot of crazy stuff before. We made it through. The Earth goes around the sun. We made it through evolution. We'll probably settle down. What do you think?
Again, it's a misinterpretation of the statement. People have heard the threat is that society would be destabilized, right? And we're thinking people running down the street, tearing out their hair, staring up at the sky and crying. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the power structures, the energy sector, the educational system, the governmental system, the systems of control that are in power are threatened by alien contact, and they are dead right. Yes, they are threatened. Yes, they will crumble and collapse, which would be a problem for everybody. So we need to make the transition slowly, but also it ain't going to happen. It ain't going to come from them. That's the last thing they want. They have generations of families who have been in the family business for a long time, and they feel like they want to pass down all that to their kids. It's a bid for immortality. Everybody wants to live forever, have a hospital wing named after them. Those are the guys that are threatened. The guy with their name on the hospital wing. That's a big problem, and it's a huge problem for them. So we're not going to, no matter how, here's my prediction, no matter how, look, Congress hopefully has some power, and they can and they can slowly sort of force a form of disclosure. And I think it'll happen. But it's not going to happen. It's going to be tooth and nail all the way. And right? I mean, well, it's like I don't feel like moving out of my 15-room mansion. I don't want to do that today. So they're not gonna come out. You have to go in, drag them out, and then barricade the door. And so it's going to be a process.
I tend to agree tooth and nail. And I think also from the military perspective, there's just no obvious upside to revealing this information. And there's a lot of potential downside, like loss of control or just like destabilization of, question mark nature. And given that there are some like potential negatives and no bright, clear positives, they're going to keep it under wraps for now.
As long as they possibly can. It has to come from the people. It has to come from the people. The job that you're doing, hopefully, the best job that we can do is sort of try to reach in to people's consciousness who are not aware of this subject, on board with this subject, understand why it might be important or interesting, and hopefully encourage them to take their own steps toward discovering why this is important, why it's real, and why we need you, to be a part of it. We need as many minds and voices as we can possibly get right now.
So that sounds like a good time to pivot toward your book. Is this mission part of why you wanted to write that, to reach out and explain to people the journey that you've been on, learning about this stuff and open the doors for some more folks?
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that it attracts people when you're writing what I've found that writing the book, I'm kind of torn between two audiences. The first audience is the people who are very familiar with the subject. And the second audience is the people who are not, but have an interest, to my mind, all the books that we need have been written about whether or not UFOs are real. Okay. We've got hundreds of those books. Some of them are really good. I highly recommend UFOs, The Secret History by Michael Hesseman. It's
cool.
gotta be maybe, I don't know, 20-year-old book, but it doesn't matter. It's a history of the phenomenon, and it's the secret history. And I found that book to be incredibly valuable. Timothy Good's Above Top Secret, of course, Richard Dolan's UFOs and the National Security State. Those three books are really all you need.
I agree about Richard Dolan. I haven't read The Secret History. Above Top Secret, I read, but it didn't super sink in. I would add Leslie Kane's great book, also called UFOs, and Robert Powell's recent book,
Generals. That book is great. Look, there's tons of great books, and if you don't like books, most people seem to not like books. Just go to NICAP.org and look at the 1952 military pilot sightings for the year 1952, and just go through them. If you're really hard-headed and you still think there's nothing to it, if you look at those 1952 military sightings by pilots on NICAP.org, then I can't help you. And your mind would best be served somewhere else, which is great. This isn't the only subject in the world. It's just the most important one in the world right now.
It's just the biggest story in human history.
Just the biggest story in human history, but we do need to get other shit done. So knock yourself out.
1952, by the way, what a year. So much cool stuff. The DC flap, there's the Salem picture, which is right near where I am. It's all over the country. It's thousands of sightings.
It's way bigger than the drone experience that we've been going through. It's at least comparable. The difference being these were real UFOs. These were discs, these were alien craft, cigar-shaped disc, spheres, orbs. But 1952 was a huge test by the aliens to see just how ready we were, And make no mistake, like they're not just flying around doing their thing, and whether or not we see them or not is up to us. They want us to see them. that we are in the middle of an acclamation program. It's not initiated by us. We need to do the work. They're not going to come to us. We need to come to them. But they are not going away until we do. Come to them, come to the recognition that of what kind of universe we really live in. We're of young civilization in the midst of vastly older civilizations in the universe. And our ideas about time and space are as primitive as they were 500 years ago during the Copernican revolution, when we were just figuring out that the universe didn't revolve around the Earth. We are still in that kind of mindset, and we don't like to, we don't, I don't even think we can think that way. It's probably not even good for us to think that way. We need to sort of, have an idea that we've got things mostly figured out.
Yeah.
But we don't.
It's really weird, that feeling that, like, when you grow up and they teach you about science, they're teaching you as if we figured it all out. And the previous generations went through this revelation where they realized the world was different. But now we basically got it. But then they also teach you that 95% of the universe is made up of stuff we don't understand and might not exist. Right. So it's a strange
it's what do they call it? Dissonance. It's cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
Which is necessary, in a way. And this needs to be a slower process, slower than a lot of people, the other audience, the other half of so once you make that step and you're like, oh my God, and your mind is blown, then you're like, well, what is everybody waiting for? Get to it. Every time some whistleblower comes out, you see online, people are freaking out like, what the fuck? That was nothing. Should show us the stuff already, which is great. It's so, what's the word? Immature. We want our cake and we want it now. And why do I have to wait?
That's true.
There's reasons why it would not be a great idea to just spill all the beans. And it needs to be a slower drip, which is frustrating for me too. I mean, believe me, it's like, let's get to it. But I understand the reasons why we need to take it slow.
To your point there must have been times in the 15 years or so you've been thinking about this that you doubted yourself and you kind of waffled in and out of this reality, right? Or was it more like a lightning bolt when you saw that thing and then from then on?
Well, when you have an experience, it just becomes what the hell was that?
Okay.
And sure, you go through all of the alternate explanations one by one and really try to break them down. And but that process is relatively fast if you take it seriously, if you really buckle down and start doing the homework. You get to the conclusion, okay, Jesus. But it does the sort of like holy shit moment comes in waves. There's not just one holy shit moment and then you're on to other. It's like holy shit, and then maybe 6 weeks later you're like, wait a second, holy shit. And then a couple of months later it happens again. So there's these waves of holy shit that continue to resonate. It's an echo that continues to resonate, and you kind of get blown away by it every now and then, and I still do. And that's pretty cool. It's a great feeling, I guess the most ontological shock is just trying to wrap your mind around the fact that you're living in a world where we really don't. We think we have answers that we really don't have. That science, and then you see the terrible limitations of our human sciences and social sciences. I mean, just everything, and the cracks and the seams get exposed of all over the place. Everywhere I go now, I start seeing just how primitive, society that we live in. And but that doesn't, it shouldn't stop you from enjoying what we have. And there's also something kind of fascinating about embracing the primitive, society that we live in. I mean, there's if you think back to like 2,000 years ago, like there were some pluses about living in a Greek society 2,000 years ago, you know? So,
a closeness to nature. I've heard you're a barefoot fan. You like to stay grounded.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do. I'm barefoot as often as possible. I started putting on shoes when I go out to, you know, I just, you know, I thought, you know what, I'm kind of an asshole. I should put some fucking shoes on. I can wear shoes for 2 hours while I'm at this stupid event. So I started doing that. You know,
I'm very polite.
I'm still evolving. I'm evolving. It's a work in progress over here.
I hear that point though about some advantages of prior versions of human civilization. Maybe we were closer to each other in some ways. We were closer to spiritualism, closer to nature. Then there are upsides to, you know, penicillin and video chats. So we're working it out. But I've also heard you say elsewhere, this is an interesting tipping point before we get even more technological, or before we bring AI into our bodies and start, you know, using nanotech as part of all of our operations and become our machines more. So maybe there's something in that for non-human visitors. Sorry, if you want to bounce off anything there, go ahead.
No, let me tell you that the other reason why this matters is because we're in a particularly dangerous transition moment.
Yeah.
You know? As we become more interconnected through the internet, through social media, as we're able to share information faster than ever before, as we're able to learn about the way governments and corporations really work, you know, this is changing the way governments and corporations do business, right? Because they're exposed. They can't get away with shit that they could get away with 5 years ago, you know? So they really have to change their game. Just a brief example is the 1,400-page bill that they tried to push through Congress at Christmas. This happens every Christmas. And every Christmas they get away with it because all of those congressmen are not going to read 1,400 pages of a bill. And they, you know, so we've learned the expression pork, right? They stuff all this garbage into this bill. The bill becomes about 68 other things, and they're able to push it through billions and billions of dollars because nobody wants to read that stuff, and they do it on purpose because people want to be with their families. So they sign the damn thing and move on. But this time, social media, we all knew what they were doing. They were exposed. So we stopped it. That didn't happen. And that was the first time that we were able to do that because of the instantaneous social feedback that our institutions are getting right now, okay? So they obviously are in the business of staying in control. They have hired people like the Brookings Institute and the Jasons to say, hey, here's a bunch of money. Come back to me in 6 months about what's going to happen 10 years from now. Where is on this trajectory, given our technology, where will we be in 10 years? And then they want that report so they can say, how do we stay ahead of this game? How do we stay in control? So it's a constant process. As technology evolves, governments and corporations need to evolve in order to stay ahead so that they can stay in control. But the problem now is that there's only one way that they can do that now. And that's through some sort of authoritarian control. You know, they've been pretty good at creating the illusion that we live in a democracy. And in some ways we still do. Free speech, you know, look at the battle on free speech that we've had lately. This is for one reason, because governments want to control what people know, because the less they know, the more they can get away with, right? So that's why we see misinformation and disinformation and all this garbage being how dangerous everything is. And people in the UK are being arrested for tweets that they make. All right. They're in the guise of safety, security. We're asked to be giving up our liberties, but there's only one reason that you'd ever want to give up your liberty to free speech. That's so that shut up and do what we tell you. becomes the law of the land. And if that happens, we're dead. You never get it back. How could you? The only way to get it back is through violent revolution. Okay.
So
nobody wants to do that. I'd like going home and having dinner with my daughter. I don't want to be on the street with a fucking pitchfork, because I'm yoked to an authoritarian system that won't let me live my life.
Yeah, it sounds like a hassle. That revolution. It's
a big hassle. So that's why we're in this incredibly important transition moment now, because because that's the only way that they can maintain the kind of control that they have over us now.
I just want to complicate this picture a little bit because I'm an armchair futurist. I like reading emerging sci-tech stuff, and something I'm hearing the AI guys say a lot is there is tech coming that can be so easily weaponized that the only defense against it is scary totalitarian style overreach, and nobody really wants that. But we're also having a hard time thinking about how we can, like, say, stop some random terrorist from 3D printing a 20x more dangerous coronavirus in their lab. That's not tomorrow, but it might be 10 or 20 years from now. They're going to be able to ask an evil generative AI to make some like targeted virus. And the only way to stop them would be like a massive sprawling security state. And nobody likes that idea either. So what do? You live with the threat of the international AI terrorism, or you embrace some expanded role of the state? Neither seems particularly appealing. And to your point from earlier, if the aliens, if whoever is visiting here has figured out an answer to this infernal riddle, it would be really great if they could share that with us sometime soon.
That's up to us. Okay. And you're absolutely right. It's a great point. That's where we're headed. Too much power in the hands of too many people, out of 1 billion people, chances are good that you'll get some maniac who's just smart enough, a Ted Kaczynski to really do some damage. And that's a problem, and that's been a problem. Kaczynski's a good example. That's been a problem for a while. So there's two sort of ways to tackle that problem: top down or bottom up. And the top down approach is the authoritarian hands, take all your toys away,
massive surveillance.
And then mental surveillance. We need to know what you're thinking at all times. You need to tune in. You have to have the nanobots running through you, or you have to turn on the 5G that can actually read your brainwaves from a distance, so that we know that everybody is, okay. Yeah. Everybody's safe. In the name of safety, it's a huge problem.
And that's how we become the Borg.
And the other way to tackle that is bottom up. And that is the way that the governments and corporations that run the world right now don't want us to do. And that's through social change. That's through higher education. That's through actually teaching children and taking care of them. Because when you give, that's through true democratic child care and education, which we do not have. Okay. The rich people can put their kids in private schools, and those schools actually pay particular attention to each individual kid, right? But that trickles down pretty fast, and we get most people who are conditioned by the education system to live in the society that we do now. This blew me away when I learned it a long time ago, but Rockefeller during the Industrial Revolution realized that we were going to need factory workers. We didn't have, that wasn't a thing. Nobody was a factory worker. Nobody could sit in one place for 12 hours and do a repetitive task. And that's what we needed to build the machines that we were going to change the world with, right? We needed workers. So Rockefeller wrote an open letter, you can read it. And he said, we need workers. We need an educational system that's going to create these workers. So I suggest that we adopt the Prussian Rush school system, because the Prussians kept having a revolution every few years and they couldn't figure it out until they learned that the older kids were teaching the younger kids what was messed up about the country, right? So the governments kept having to battle these revolutions every few years until they figured out that separating the kids. So we separate the younger kids from the older kids.
Whoa.
Then the older kids won't be teaching the younger kids, and we could teach the younger kids what we wanted them to know.
Wow.
And the revolutions ended. So
Man.
Rockefeller said, let's do the Prussian system. So we can drill into these young kids exactly what we want from them. Let's give them repetitive tasks. Let's give them an authoritarian teacher that can punish you, a boss.
Yeah.
And let's brainwash these people condition them into doing repetitive things all day long. And that's, the world that we live in today. That needs to change. That's bottom up. Bottom up is creating a true an educational system for children. Because if you're paying attention to every kid, you're going to be able to identify the Ted Kaczynski at a very early age.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, unless they live in the woods, they're going to be identified and dealt with in a way that's appropriate for each individual kid. And it's possible to do. And we have the technology to do that now. That doesn't need to be a human teacher. That can actually be your own personal AI assistant that's with you from a young age, guiding you, understanding what your talents are, understanding what your limitations are, and guiding you through a process. And I think that alien societies have something probably similar, but it's accelerated. I don't know anything about alien childhoods. Maybe they have them, maybe they don't. Maybe some alien societies have. When we think about aliens, we think about like one sort of thing. What is an alien? A gray alien. The truth is, according to the last 80 years of contact cases and onboard encounters, there's a incredibly wide variety of alien races visiting our planet. So there's hopefully, a whole bunch of different solutions that each of these have taken. I think we would like some of them, and some of them would be like, maybe not for us.
Yeah.
But learning about how civilizations handled their problems and what the outcome was, right? Because now we have the result. Like if aliens show up and they're a bunch of clones and they're all thinking the same thing at the same time, maybe we'd be like, that's a little much for us. But maybe some other aliens will show up that are a little more amenable to who we are as human beings, and we could learn how they did what they did. But, and this is my point, aliens should not hand us the cure for cancer, hand us the educational system that we need to fix things. That would be a terrible idea. To be sort of handed the book, the blueprint, and everybody's like, we got to follow this blueprint. And other people are like, fuck that blueprint. It came from fucking aliens. Not touching it. It's problems, huge problems right away. Here's a cure for cancer. Oh, great. So now nobody's going to die. So now we have millions of people who are living to be 100 years old, maybe billions, like suddenly no one's dying. What the fuck? Problems.
Now we have to colonize Mars.
Yeah. Now we have to start killing people. Thanks, aliens.
I really like your vision of the bottom-up answer to this infernal AI problem. And I just wanted to add to it that I think there can be like a peer-to-peer element that we can encourage among each other as well, of like knowing who your neighbors are and staying in good touch with your friends and practicing like spiritual hygiene. And I think that's a good response for a bunch of different kinds of threats like social decay and AI revolution, and also
it always starts with alienation, and the society that we've created through in the Industrial Revolution and the Prussianization of our educational system. These are the consequences of what we have, the society that we've created. And if we want changes, we're going to have to change society, and how we do that is going to be a chore, but the first step is awareness. First step is awareness. And then great minds will come in and wrestle it out, and we'll get some solutions that make sense, to the most amount of people if we're living in a democracy.
Yeah, really personal, which is sometimes not a very sexy solution to people. We like big structural ideas, which are exciting and important also. But sometimes the best things we can do are within our own control. And
and it is structural. I mean, ultimately, we are talking about huge structural changes.
I really like your vision of education there, and of the AI of assistance for kids, and like finding kids with challenges early and universally supporting people. Also, taking poverty off the table.
Right, and we have to want it because the first world lives off the backs of the third world. Okay, we have a third world for a reason. We keep countries in the third world. They don't educate. They don't have access to the tools that the first world has access to for a reason, because we need workers to keep the first world running the way we're running it. All right. That's a huge problem for me. I think every human being on the planet should have an equal opportunity, and why the hell not?
And there are organizations that have found really great results by just giving support directly to communities. Like I'm thinking of the Laptop for Every Child organization. I haven't checked in on them in a while, but
sure. Yeah. No, great organizations who are doing wonderful work to try to ameliorate some of these, but it's a problem that's never going to be solved unless we solve it from within. And that's a problem.
Let's pivot to some of the fun details of your extraterrestrial research or encounter research or non-human intelligence research, whatever you'd like to call it. I strongly resonated with your point about being torn between two audiences. One, the introductory, and two, the people who are already grappling with this subject. And I have had this problem every time I've tried to write anything about UFOs. It's like the whole first half has to be, no, seriously, this is a real thing.
Right.
With Kenneth Arnold, blah, blah, blah. But then the second half gets wilder and more fun. And it's also where things veer off in a million directions and sort of credibility gets shadowy. So I'd love to hear how you think about that and how you kind of like gauge sources. But I'd also love to get into some of the nitty gritty on like big picture, like what you think is happening. And specifically, if your book does explore this, I'd love to go into this idea of alien races or multiple kinds of NHI. Is that something that you explored in some detail?
Well, we have very limited information on alien races. What we do look, all we have to go on are the contact cases. And if that were, half a dozen or, even 100 crazy people who have these onboard encounter thing where they met an alien, midnight walking their dog, then we could throw that into the I don't care basket. Good for you. I hope that works out for you.
Yeah.
But the truth is we have thousands and thousands.
Yeah, probably hundreds of thousands
of contact cases. I'm not talking about I saw a UFO. I'm talking about meetings with aliens, and we have thousands of these, thousands and thousands. I don't think anybody's ever tried to even collate how many. I'd love to know that, actually, if anybody's tried to determine, at least give an estimate. We have trouble estimating how many UFO sightings there have been.
Yeah.
Nobody's keeping very good records. North America keeps the best records, but they're really, not up to snuff because we're out here doing this all on our own.
Very curious about this question too. And as far as the sightings of UFOs, where my current understanding is it's somewhere north of 300,000. I
think there's been millions since 1905. It goes back a long time.
That makes sense. No, that makes sense because I think something like 10% of Americans say they've seen one. So that's obviously
we're looking at millions. We're looking at millions a sight.
But I meant, recorded.
The recorded sightings. The UFO, what they call the desktop reference. Those folks do really good work.
And
they've been able, the digital world we've been able to collate in a much more sort of realistic way than ever before. But ultimately it doesn't matter. There's the UFOs, great.
Right.
So who's driving them? Well, if you haven't done a lot of research or dipped your toes into the serious woo of onboard contact cases or just contact cases, then you could be swayed by the hypothesis that maybe these are crypto-terrestrials living under our oceans for some god-awful reason. If you have the whole planet and you've been here since the beginning of time, what the hell are you doing under the ground or in these weird underwater bases? Like, hello, it's kind of great up here. So I have problems with a crypto-terrestrial hypothesis. However, there are underground bases, there are underwater bases. They've probably been here for, who knows how many hundreds or thousands of years, but they're not from here. They're from elsewhere. And so I'm a fan of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, just because we're dealing with hundreds of different alien races that have been reported over the decades. And why are they all humanoid? What the hell? This is a problem for science, So I get into that in the book. What fascinates me is the challenges to science that aliens pose, and they challenge material science. They challenge our physics. They also challenge our evolutionary and biological sciences, and they challenge our theories of mind, consciousness studies, neurobiology studies. They give an interesting weight to things like near-death experience. All these things can be sort of viewed in a new light if you take alien visitation seriously, and we should. So I get into that. That's my jam in the book. I'm not, so in a lot of ways, the book really is for people who have already answered the question for themselves. I'm not answering the question, are UFOs real? It's just move on already. Even if you're new to this subject, like, do an afternoon of research and get over it.
Get to the next step. Yeah,
just get. Come on, guys, let's move on. So I don't do any Kenneth Arnold, Betty and Barney Hill, Roswell.
Okay.
I don't deal with any of that crap, and it's not crap. It's wonderful, wonderful stuff. But I've been there and I've done that. And I think that the people who I'm interested in talking to have also, in one way or another, answered the question for themselves. Now I want to know, who are these beings? What do they want? Why are they here now? What might their program be? Why do they want us to know they exist? That's a really big question that I deal with. And what does it mean for our idea about evolution? What does it mean about our ideas about physics? And what does it mean about our ideas about consciousness? That's my book. Wow, and I think that, if we take these things at face value, that this is how the universe works, then what falls out is visiting aliens, So you can build the model and it works from the top down and it works from the bottom up, which isn't proof of anything, but I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just asking what kind of universe do we truly live in, And there's books that need to be written about the modern era of disclosure and all that. Mm-hmm. I did deal with that in a very peripheral level, because there's people who are much more educated about that. That gets into governments and laws and admirals and all that stuff that I'm just not interested in. Although it's incredibly important,
Agree. But so it sounds like you're focused mostly on contact cases. Am I reading that right?
Yes, I deal with contact cases, and mostly the fallout, of the look. There's thousands of contact cases, so there's so not so much interested in the particulars of each case.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the aggregation of the similarities between all the cases. What do they all have in common?
Okay.
What can they teach us? And we can only sort of learn by their commonalities, One interesting question is, what don't they have? Why is it that every onboard encounter, there's nothing on board? There's the beings, there's the instruments that are used to run the craft, and nothing else. There's no back room where the gray kicks back and gets its drink on.
Yeah.
There's no lounge area.
Yeah. There's no game room.
There's no art hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
There's no pretty colors that they painted one room. Here's the green room where it's interesting how uniform all the craft is. And I think that's for a reason, I think it's because these visiting aliens from all of these different races, they want to keep their cultural transmission as low as possible. They communicate as little about who they are and where they come from as they possibly can.
Interesting.
We have very little. They're very careful to show us nothing about their culture, about their society, about what they value or don't value. And if you strip away all the things that humans are very clever, and we can read a lot into very small details, like Sherlock Holmes, we can figure out a lot if you give us a little, and aliens are careful to give us nothing.
That is a really interesting theory.
I find that really fascinating.
Propound that. It's because it is a little spooky that there's no art. There's I've never heard a story about an alien song or a painting on the wall.
Yeah. Or do they have a sense of humor?
Yeah. I did hear one story about that, I guess. One of the Bob Monroe books has like a psychic experience with an alien in which the alien says, I come to Earth for the jokes, basically. I'm collecting experiences with comedians.
I would hope there'd be some mirth out there in the universe.
Yeah.
I would really hope. But absence is not evidence, right? So we shouldn't read into the fact that we don't see I don't think we're dealing with a droll band of space nihilists. Okay. I think it's purposeful. They're purposefully keeping the cultural transmission as low as possible.
And that would be true across these various form factors.
Which then you have to say, why is that?
Yeah.
That goes against human imagination about freedom and culture and different countries and different cultural practices, there should be a little bit of everything, but these guys are all obviously, they look incredibly different.
Yeah.
Some are really short. Some are really tall. It looks like they're different races, right?
Uh-huh.
But there's another question that we don't have the answer to, which is, this is what my friend Paul Hynek said, which blew my mind. They're probably not sending their A-team. So are we dealing with, are they all bio-robotic organisms? Are they all sort of like some sort of avatar clone that the race has created? And does that have something to do with how they travel through space? Because we don't have that figured out. So does the biology tell us something about how they got here, or does it tell us something about what they're doing here? Or does it tell us something about the rules? Because they all seem to follow extremely similar guidelines in their dealing with us, and they obviously want us to know. It's interesting because they want us to know that they are here, but they don't want us to know who they are. They keep themselves hidden, but they reveal themselves all the time.
Yeah.
So they're coming at us. There's some interesting sort of liminal space.
Yeah.
it's a liminal in-between space that they're engaging us with. They're a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they're not this and they're not that. So you can't really pin it down. Not in the way that we would expect. The first thing we would expect is they should march up to the scientists who are the smartest people on the planet and talk to them.
Yeah.
Give us some equations and tell us about the universe, and they could start exchanging some math. Like that's what we think should happen.
Like societal engagement. Announce yourself to our leaders, hang over cities.
Sit down with the president, take a photo op.
Mm-hmm.
Have some serious conversations about politics and science. That's what they should do.
And so far, they're not interested in that. My brother calls this the kind of careful problem. Why do we see them a lot in these incidental sightings or the hundreds of thousands of encounters? But they're not making themselves obviously visible. I liked your point earlier about this like acclamation program, which does kind of feel like what might be going on right now in New Jersey and around the world.
We're in an acclamation program. And, we live in a hierarchical society, extremely hierarchical, has been since the beginning of time. And we expect that any other society would too. And maybe this is a clue that they don't come from a hierarchical society, which is really interesting. Maybe it's a more decentralized society.
Oh, interesting. You mean the fact that they're not engaging with us on the like levels of hierarchies suggests that
the fact that they don't go to our leaders, the fact that they don't engage with the the institutions, the academics, may indicate that they don't come from a hierarchical society, and that obviously that's not what they value, and not only that, they don't even if they didn't come from a hierarchical society, they obviously understand that we do. So if they wanted to respect, do unto others as you would have done unto you, so would they then say, okay, well, these guys obviously love their kings and queens and leaders and generals, and so let's talk to them. Maybe we should start there. Like they don't do that either.
What's one of the weirder parts about the ancient alien stuff is that it seems like they might have done that a few thousand years ago. Like they were chilled, rolling
all
up
that
to
stuff gets lost in the mist, and that's fun to look at. But I don't have any time for ancient aliens. Great, and one day we could probably figure out if we've been genetically manipulated or not. I think that's a question that's on the table.
Yeah,
they certainly could have. There's so much on the table that we just don't know. Are we unique in some way?
Mm-hmm.
Are we an experiment? Obviously life and intelligence has arisen naturally somewhere in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Did it necessarily mean that's us? Were we genetically sort of, given a helping hand just to see what would happen?
Yeah.
Are we part of some extremely long-term, experiment?
Cultivation project?
We don't know. It's not off the table.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be my first assumption. We'd want to start out with a principle of mediocrity here and say we're probably, just like most everybody else, but maybe it's not the case, or maybe we're unique in some other ways, But I have a feeling, based on the principle of mediocrity, that we're at a stage in our development that is a natural stage in the development of civilizations. It's happened many times in the galaxy and in the universe, and that we are being engaged as part of a program. And what's interesting is if that's true, that program started at the very beginning of our technological adolescence, right? So we've never lived in a world where we've been completely alone. Mm-hmm. These stories have been around for hundreds of years. They've taken a long time to trickle up to be, through the subconscious of society into consciousness. And we're right now at that liminal stage where we're just starting to break through to the consciousness of society. But man, have they been here early, like all along? Like, so in in a very real way, we are being managed by intelligences that are older than us. So we are being managed. We are coming into a sort of a cosmological society, right? And we're being managed from the very beginning, so that however that's going to play out, aliens are going to have a hand in it. It's that so in a way, we don't have a choice. And that's interesting. We do not have the choice of freely developing and evolving on this planet. That's interesting. Now we have freedoms, and we certainly have a lot of freedoms, but I think that as we start to encounter these technological transformations that you were talking about, and the whether or not we're going to have an authoritarian AI and questions like that, all that's going to be mitigated by the knowledge that we're not alone. So there's that.
So is it your read on the experience literature that there genuinely are lots of different types of visitors? And would you agree with the idea that there's sort of a dominant clutch of groups with a long tail of other kinds of visitors? Or
what do you mean by that?
Idea there's like 4 groups that represent most of the visitors. Like it's the grays and the mantids and the tall whites and the Nordics and the reptiles or whatever. And then there are like 100 other or 1,000 other kinds of beings who have also shown up from time to time. And you get these like weird random cases where, like, I don't know, they were short and blue, or like this guy looked like a television set, or somebody said somebody looked like a barrel, or like a couple of them are robot like,
Right.
But most of them fall into these baskets of like, they're either human-ish or they're classic grays, either short or tall, or the Nordics or the reptiles and the mantids. I always, right around mantids is when I feel myself.
I know. You can only handle so much, and we don't have to handle the whole thing. You try to wrap your mind around the reptile people. I can't.
I know.
I'm not saying that they don't exist. I don't know. We don't know. As David Jacobs, who's an abduction researcher, my favorite abduction researcher, said, there's no chance that I've gotten all of this right. And he's written 3 great books, and he lays it out. They're all great. And he lays it out as best as he can. And he's been as rigorous as he can. And he says in the beginning of one of them, he's like, there's no chance that I've gotten all this right. Because of the vagaries of human recall, because of, the way we perceive reality is just not very accurate. So we just don't know.
And he mostly worked with regression hypnosis as well, right? He had his own take on how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, hypnosis is basically a form of relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing strange about it.
But he, in the book that I read, mentioned, a couple times he got different results talking to the same person.
And he's been duped. John Mack was duped. Somebody infiltrated, one of his sessions, and just to see if they could do it. And then, so we're fallible.
Yeah.
We have to look at the bigger aggregation of cases to make any kind of judgment. So your question is a good one, because most of our encounter cases are with kind of like the 4 main species column. We don't know if they're related. We don't know if the grays are all biorobotic organisms created by the mantids, and then run by the Nordics or the tall whites. The tall whites is a really interesting case by Charles Hall.
Okay. I don't know much about these guys. I just really like.
Oh yeah, check out Charles Hall and the Tall Whites. And those guys just seem to use the planet as kind of a layover station in their travels. They've got travels wrapped around, and one of those paths leads to Earth, and they hang out here for maybe a month or 2, and then they zip off to wherever the heck it is they're going next. And that seems to be their only engagement with Earth. And that tells me that these races are probably here for as many different reasons as there are races, And I think we could be dealing with a whole slew of different ideologies and reasons for being here. I think we could, I've just recently been able to wrap my mind around the fact that we could be dealing, some of them, with time travelers. You know, I still have trouble with that, but
same.
It's on the table. It's within the realm of the possible. What the hell do we know about time? Nothing. Okay. So at this point, now, if 10 years from now we learn something about time and then time travelers gets knocked off the table, great. But right now they're on the table. You know, for Rendlesham Forests, those guys claim to be from the humans from the future. And there's been other pretty detailed, interesting cases where the contactee was told that the aliens were from our future. So that's odd. But it kind of tells you that there's a lot of different stuff happening here, and it's not just one thing. Although there is one thing, and we are being engaged in some type of acclamation program. But that program is just one of the things that's happening on our planet. I think there's probably sightseers. Why wouldn't there be?
Yeah.
If there's millions or thousands of different societies out there, all completely different, all with their own values, all at their own stage, at some point, interstellar travel becomes a possibility, you know? And that point happens exactly when we figure out what gravity is. And that might not be that far away. Because once you can unhook matter from mass, right? Once you can release mass from matter, then that matter is massless. And massless things move at the speed of light. That's a law of nature. Massless things move at the speed of light. The speed of light, it takes 100,000 years for a photon to travel from one side of the galaxy to the other, right? But that's from our point of view. From the point of view of the photon, it takes 0 time. This is Einstein. So if you were on a massless craft, right, and you took off from the other side of the galaxy, the time it would take you on board the massless craft to get to here would be this much time. Okay? So once we unhook gravity from mass, the universe is your oyster. So there's a lot of different societies who are figuring this out. And I think that one of the reasons aliens are here is they're making sure we don't figure that out too soon. Because we have to be very careful about what kinds of civilizations are zipping around from planet to planet. That could be a big problem. Then you're looking at Star Wars. If it's just pell-mell and whenever we figure it out, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want and that planet looks pretty and I'm camping here, make me leave. Then you're dealing with a interstellar war and all this garbage. So I think that we're on, part of the acclamation program is to make sure that we don't get out of the garage with the keys to the Maserati.
Yeah. With guns in the front seat.
Yeah, with bombs and guns and, you know, just and it's crazy ideas in our head about what the universe is and what life is about. Now it's all about me and conquer and domination and money and sex and planets. Fuck yeah, bring it on. Yeah, I'll take your planet.
We don't understand consciousness yet or whatever the afterlife is, the spirit element.
We ain't quite ready to be zipping around out there yet, you know?
So managing our emergence, that sounds like a rational expectation.
It sounds like a really smart idea is what it sounds like. It sounds like it would save them a hell of a lot of time and energy chasing all these crazy emerging civilizations around out there in the universe. My God, that could get out of hand real quick. So you better be on top of it before any of that shit happens. So maybe that's what all these probes are about. You know, you send out probes and you look through your telescope, you know, like that one looks like it might have some oxygen on it. Send a probe out there. This one just has nice. Send a probe anyway. Just make sure.
Why not? We're flush with them. We're making them in all these oceans. Another thing that drops out of this that is kind of a positive, at least guess about the way the world works, is that if there are multiple groups and they're all behaving similarly, that kind of suggests that they operate in some sort of accord. Does that Does that track for you? And do you kind of get the sense from your research that there might be some like agreement out there between multiple organizations or different species, if we want to call them that?
Yeah, they interact with us in very specific ways. And they're from very, as far as we can tell, very different societies, races, planets. They're different. And yet they behave in very similar ways here, which would suggest that they have some sort of overarching kind of, game plan and how they deal with it. They get handed the manual, how to deal with the Earth people.
Mm-hmm.
And they flip through it and they're like, yeah, okay, okay. And then they do, and obviously they want to do that because there's nobody breaking the rules, which is interesting. Why aren't there rule breakers? Where's the rebels? And then you're like, oh my God, maybe they come from some sort of Borgian hive mind. They must be bad.
Yeah, that would be.
We have problems in engaging with aliens because we want to paint them as either good or bad. Good meaning they've got lots of stuff and they're going to give it to us, and bad meaning they're going to blow up our planet and rape our women and then blow up our planet. So we have trouble wrapping our minds around what they really are. They're probably not good the way we envision good to be, and they're probably not bad the way we envision bad to be.
Two questions to this point. One, do you buy Jacques Vallée's interest in a trickster element? And two, have you seen indications of conflict between these groups in any of your studies?
Yeah, okay. Well, Vallée's got a great point. And the trickster is, look, I think that they're engaging with us on a psychological level. I think they understand human psychology extremely well. I think they probably understood it, most of it, before they even got here, because through studying other similar creatures on other planets. I don't think we're that unique, obviously. If all of the races that we encounter are humanoid, wow, what does that tell you about evolution? But it tells us that they understand human psychology and they're dealing with us in ways that are consonant with that understanding. So the trickster element plays an important role in human psychology. So yeah, I think they're engaging with us in ways that we will respond to and understand.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as conflict, I don't know. That's a big question. I get into that in the book quite a bit because there's good arguments for both sides of that equation. But when you have serious, control over matter and energy, I would imagine that it would be within the realm of the possible for them to vaporize a planet or maybe even a star. I think you're talking about some serious control over matter and energy in the universe. Gives you real power, like the real, like godlike powers of control. And I think that comes with a concomitant responsibility. So I'm not a proponent of Star Wars, and now that doesn't mean it can't happen, but if it does happen, I think it would be managed the same way that we're being monitored. Look, you're not alone. You want to have a fight with your neighbor, right? We can do that on Earth, but in alien super society, every other house in the neighborhood is just as involved with whatever conflict you think you've got going on with the guy across the street. You're not just you're engaging with everybody.
That's so interesting because it resonates with your bottom-up idea from the beginning of the conversation about our civilization.
Yeah. We're thinking in terms of being isolated, individual people with autonomy, free will, and fuck you, I'll do whatever I want, as long as I'm not breaking the law, or even maybe I will break the law and I'll do the time, that's not, we're looking at that from a human angle, and we shouldn't be. We need to be looking at things from a universal, unified consciousness kind of way, and I don't think, the only way that we think about that is the Borg, well, everybody's, hooked up to an AI machine and they're all fucking zombies. But I don't think that's true either. I think you can have perfect individuality and freedom and still be interconnected to a unified mind.
So interesting the way that mirrors the beginning of our conversation about how we're going to deal with advanced technology. We want these freedoms and independence. We want autonomy and like cultural diversity, but also we want a world that's safe and secure for everybody. So it would be really cool to think that that's how it works on a universal scale, that there is, as you say, there's the threat of this godlike power, sun destruction out there that will, and on some political level, require a control system, or at least like a mutual acknowledgement of threat and respect. So that we're
and for a control system to mean anything, for it to not feel like a ball and chain, it has to be valuable. It has to be innately valuable. It has to be something that you want, that you agree with, that you're a part of, that you feel connected to. That sings to your very bottom of your soul, right?
Or there's no deterrence. Is that what you're saying? Like if there's no value,
or you're always going to get people who are like, "Fuck that."
Yeah, the nihilist terrorist threat.
Yeah, it has to be real, and it has to be valuable. So what could that be? And I think it's life. I think life itself. What's the most valuable thing in the universe? Life. Life. And I think that that comes with an innate respect, because you're a part of it. That's what you are. At the heart of it, we're alive. But as far as us wrestling around, and we need to do this. We're not ready for all that. We need to do what we're doing. Right now. So, and that's another reason why aliens probably leave us alone.
To help us take those steps.
They're not here to just, sort of turn on the alien AI and turn us all into, alien board members or, whatever. That just invasion of the body snatcher shit. Like, that's not the goal.
I've heard the analogy in this space that you can't just take a caterpillar out of its chrysalis and have it suddenly become a butterfly. It has to go through the transformation process. That's
good. Yeah. But it's good. But it's definitely, there's a heat lamp. There's a little cage that we're kind of in.
That feels right.
We're not out in the wild. We think we're out in the wild. We think this is a wild west. We think once we get into space, boy, it's just going to be the wild one, the new frontier.
Yeah, just us.
Right? Star Trek, New Frontier. No, it's pretty managed. It's pretty controlled. And it has to be, for their own safety.
What a wild surprise to be waking up to this situation.
Yeah, it's wild. So again, it's liminal. It is free, but it's also managed.
That feels right.
It's fascinating, the dualities that exist in the whole subject.
I wanted to ask a little bit closer to your day job, how engaging with this scientific revolution has made you think about sci-fi, if it has changed your feeling about sci-fi. Like we used to say hard sci-fi is no aliens, basically. No the Forths and no aliens, and maybe no like light drives or whatever.
Yeah. The Expanse was hard sci-fi.
Right. So is your feeling about like if you're imagining a sci-fi project 20 years from now, or that takes place in like the 2050s or something, are you starting to think, well, gosh, I'm gonna need to involve the Greys or the Galactic Federation or something?
Well, these are super fascinating questions that open up new frontiers, sort of who we are and what we're doing here, which is what sci-fi is all about. So I expect that the next wave of science fiction is going to be extremely interesting. It's definitely going to impact the way we think about space, ourselves, the universe, and aliens. And I think we're going to see a revival of the alien, story, the alien sagas that are, and it's kind of fascinating that all of this sci-fi we have peopled with aliens that look like us just because it makes it more fun for us to imagine other worlds. Like although I did read a great book, Children Children of Time. Anyway, it was about an alien arachnid society.
Okay.
Really, really well done. Yeah, you can find it. Children of something time, I think, and this arachnid society, and I loved it. But again, like the arachnids were having people thoughts, they weren't having some alien arachnid thoughts. But he did a great job imagining what an intelligent arachnid society might look like. And I think we'll see more of that kind of stuff. But my point was that we've invented sci-fi it was people with people aliens, and that turned out to be true. That's funny.
That is one of the weirder,
yeah. And when we do Hollywood movies, the aliens are people because we got to hire actors to play the damn aliens, and nobody wants to wear the octopus outfit. So, but it turns out that we're not so far off, Star Trek, amazing. Like
Captain Kirk's got to hook up with somebody.
Just incredible.
It's interesting that I think Richard Dolan says that if you split the tall grays and the short grays into separate groups, then the number one thing people report, the number one form factor people report in these experiences is human-like creatures, which is fascinating and raises all sorts of questions about, I don't know, the potential of cloaking or potential of hybridization or just, human type beings from other places.
Yeah. Or do they create these biosynthetic organisms to look humanoid?
Yeah.
All this stuff is kind of on the table, but I think if you dig into it a little bit, you can kind of reach some tentative conclusions about what might be going on. And I think it's evolutionary. I think it's convergent evolution.
That sounds right to me. Convergent evolution, a thing I didn't know existed 5 years ago, but it's fascinating.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating.
So
it'll hone our sciences. We get this. It gives us a great sort of clues, because when take consciousness, right? There's two theories. One is that the brain creates it. The other one is the brain is an antenna. Well, if you study this phenomenon, you can be pretty sure that the brain is an antenna, and that makes consciousness maybe fundamental in the universe. And that's a whole. So now we kind of know which door might be more worth exploring than the other door. Not to say you shouldn't explore both right now, but you might want to start laying more time, money, and resources into door number 2.
That's so fascinating. And yet another layer, like we're dealing with the advanced AI on our own planet. We're dealing with nuclear weapons, that we're dealing with like engineered viruses. Now we've got alien species. And then like on top of that, there's a whole spiritual reality to consciousness that we didn't understand. We have to try to onboard all of this shit at the same time in the next 100 years without blowing ourselves up.
Yeah. And making sure everybody's got enough food and some clothes on their back,
Yeah.
It's a wild time. Hopefully we can keep it together.
So just to bring it in for a landing, out from the speculative wonders that we've explored, if we get to communicate in the next few years, what would you want to see that look like? And what would you want to send as a message from us to them, if there are such beings as them?
Well, I mean, the first thing we have to sort of contend with is that they already know what we're thinking. So, and actions speak louder than words, so the message is, what are we doing? How do we take this information? What do we do with it? Yeah, that's really important. That's hopefully up to us. I think there's a couple of different ways this society could go. I'm not sure how involved aliens will get. If life is pretty prevalent in the universe, maybe they would let us blow ourselves up. But probably I have a feeling that the Earth itself is more important than humanity. Not so. Humanity is important only in terms of how much we're, either taking care of or destroying the biosphere. And we really can't do that much damage unless we blast the nukes off, which hopefully we won't do. I don't think we will. That's obviously a problem. But other than that, I think we might be pretty free to do whatever we want as long as we're on the planet. As long as we keep it in the garage, you know, that's probably their job. Keep them in the garage, you know, try to make sure they don't get too out of hand. You know, they start trying to hit those funny red buttons. Maybe we should put a stop to that. I don't know. Maybe they'd let us do it because, you know, in another 10,000 years or, you know, sooner than that, shit would start growing again.
Yeah, right. Like those times when life got 90% eliminated and bounced back.
Just depends on how valuable the planet is right now to them. You know, like, no, yeah, but we like it here.
Yeah.
You know, we like this planet. We don't want to wait 1,000 years or 2,000 or years to come back. You know, we don't want to be cleaning up all the radiation, and we just don't want to be cleaning up your mess, people. And maybe they wouldn't let us do it, but we don't know. And hopefully we will never find out.
Anything else that you would like to say about the subject that I didn't ask today that you'd just like to get out in the ether before we meet again someday?
There's a second part to your question that I forgot. But the first part was, what would we have to say? And, you know, there's not much we have to say. Our actions speak louder than words. And I'm not sure what the other part of your question was, but
well, I guess another thing I would ask would be just like, how would you like to see the next few years go with regard to this subject and or human evolution?
More and more people becoming aware that this is the real thing. You know, it's a huge transformation. So it has to happen on its own time. We're doing the work. We're doing the job that we're supposed to be doing. So we'll just keep at it. Things have a way of unfolding, you know, in their own time. And this will certainly do that. Obviously, our biggest problem is with the controllers, the people who want to maintain control of the world, the people who are most threatened by the subject of visiting aliens, people who've been trying to keep it under wraps for so long. It's obviously not the aliens that are trying to keep it under wraps. It's us. And the reasons why that is so, we need to expose, because the answers therein will lie the answer of what to do and how to handle it, you know. So right now it's all about awareness. Don't let the man get you down.
That sounds good to me. Keep your shoulders back, keep your head up, teach your children well, and I don't know, maybe meet your neighbors, I guess, in the meantime, build a more robust society.
Excellent advice.
Thomas, thank you so much for sharing your time so generously with us today. I really appreciate your wisdom, and I'm really looking forward to your book. I'm hoping maybe when you get it out there, we can have another conversation and help.
Stay in touch. You know, just shoot me an email every now and again. And when this goes up, let me know. I'll post it because I had fun talking to you. It's good. It's always fun.
And that's the show. Thank you for watching or listening. Please support us on patreon.com/WTUFO, patreon.com/WTUFO. That will increase the odds that the show continues to exist. If you're listening in a podcast format, you can also rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can like and subscribe. It also never hurts to tell a friend about us or pop us in a social feed. Maybe if you have a favorite episode, you could share it on a thread somewhere. Thank you again for watching, listening, enjoying, and supporting, and I hope you're all having a great day.